Oops, wrong intro music. Let's try this again. Here we go. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of ADHD History, the history of the world told in no particular order. I'm your host, Xander Millette, here to info dump some pretty neat information upon you. Today, we're diving deep into the world of art history, with a twist of turtle power, as we explore the lives and legacies of four legendary artists, Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello.
Oh my!
No, not the pizza-loving, crime-fighting reptiles, although they're pretty cool too, but the original Renaissance rock stars who revolutionized the art world with their brushstrokes and chisels. From the Sistine Chapel to the streets of Florence, these masters of marble and paint left an indelible mark on history, inspiring generations with their creativity and ingenuity. And while their names may now be synonymous with sewer-dwelling superheroes, their real-life adventures are equally as captivating. So grab your nunchucks and your paintbrushes, folks, as we embark on a journey through time and artistry with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Renaissance Masters.
Cowabunga, dude!
The Renaissance, spanning roughly from the 14th to the 17th century, was a game-changer for European history. It shifted away from the stuffy medieval era, with its strict religious rules and feudalism, towards a time of curiosity, creativity, and classical revival. Starting in Italy, places like Florence, Venice, and Rome became hotbeds of intellectual and artistic activity before the Renaissance fever spread like wildfire across Europe. At the heart of the Renaissance was a deep dive into the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome. Scholars and thinkers of the time were all about dusting off those old scrolls and rekindling the flame of classical knowledge. This led to a whole new way of secular thinking, where reason and observation took center stage. Humanism was the name of the game, a movement that celebrated the awesomeness of being human, championing individualism, education, and striving for greatness in every aspect of life. Alongside all of the brainy stuff, the Renaissance was like an explosion of creativity. Artists were going wild, painting, sculpting, building, and writing their hearts out, creating some of the coolest stuff ever seen in the West. Art during this time was all about keeping it real, literally. They were obsessed with making things look lifelike, nailing down perspective, and showing off the human body like never before. Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello weren't just famous names from Ninja Turtle lore. They were heavy hitters in the art world. These guys were the celebrities of their time, shaking up the scene with their groundbreaking techniques and mind-blowing creativity. From sculpting skills to out-of-this-world creations, they set the bar sky high for artistic expression. Their influence echoes through the centuries, inspiring countless artists to push the envelope and think outside the box. First, we've got Michelangelo, the sculptor, painter, architect extraordinaire. Then we have Leonardo, the embodiment of the term Renaissance man. Raphael's masterpieces influenced generations of artists with his sense of balance, beauty, and chill vibes. And last but not least, we've got Donatello, whose sculptures were all about capturing human emotion and kicking butt, just like his turtle namesake. These artists weren't just masters with a paintbrush or chisel. They were the human incarnations of Renaissance ideals. Their creations dive deep into the human soul, exploring beauty, truth, and all the messy stuff in between. They aren't just names in history books. They're timeless legends whose art still speaks to us today, shaping the very fabric of Western civilization. Okay, fortunately for me, I am currently teaching myself Italian, so hopefully I don't embarrass myself entirely this episode. Michelangelo di Ludovico Buonarroti Simoni was born March 6, 1475 in Caprese, a small town in Tuscany, Italy. Though the four great artists are often mentioned together, Michelangelo was 86 years younger than Donatello, 23 years younger than Leonardo, and 8 years older than Raphael. Michelangelo was the second of 5 sons born to Lodovico di Leonardo di Buonarroti di Simoni, and Francesca di Neri del Miniato di Siena. His family belonged to the Florentine nobility, but had fallen on hard times, and Michelangelo grew up in a relatively modest household. After his mother's death in 1481, when he was 6 years old, Michelangelo lived with a nanny and her husband, a stonecutter, in the town of Settignano, where his father owned a marble quarry and a small farm. There, he gained his love for marble. He was the first Western artist whose biography was published while he was alive, and in fact had not one, but 3 published biographies during his lifetime. So lucky us, we get quotes directly from him. As Giorgio Vasari quotes him,
"If there is some good in me, it is because I was born in the subtle atmosphere of your country of Arezzo. Along with the milk of my nurse, I received the knack of handling chisel and hammer with which I make my figures."
During Michelangelo's childhood, a team of painters had been called from Florence to the Vatican to decorate the walls of the Sistine Chapel. Among them was Domenico Ghirlandaio, a master in fresco painting, perspective, figure drawing, and portraiture, who had the largest workshop in Florence. Michelangelo's dad, Ludovico, saw his son's talent and wasted no time in getting him an apprenticeship in 1488 with Ghirlandaio when he was 13. Under Ghirlandaio's wing, Michelangelo honed his skills in painting and learned the ropes of fresco art, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. A year later, Ghirlandaio agreed to actually pay Michelangelo as an artist, rare for a 14-year-old. During his time under Ghirlandaio's wing, Michelangelo didn't just paint. He soaked up everything the Renaissance had to offer. He rubbed elbows with big names like Botticelli, Lippi, and a rising star named Leonardo da Vinci, who was turning heads in Florence. These artists weren't just peers. They were mentors who shaped Michelangelo's early style and gave him a taste of what was possible in the art world. He attended the Platonic Academy, a humanist academy founded by the Medici, and was influenced by the likes of Pico della Mirandola and Poliziano. Michelangelo wasn't just content with painting. He wanted to soak up every drop of culture and intellect swirling around Florence. So he hung out in the workshops of sculptors and architects like Ghiberti and Brunelleschi, soaking up the secrets of classical sculpture and architectural design. When he wasn't chiseling away, he was buried in the works of ancient thinkers like Plato and Virgil, drawing inspiration from their timeless wisdom. As Michelangelo entered his late teens, his talent was already turning heads in Florence. His early relief works like The Madonna of the Stairs and The Battle of Centaurs hinted at the greatness to come, showcasing his incredible skill and unique artistic vision. Michelangelo worked for a time with the sculptor Bartoldo di Giovanni. When he was 17, another pupil, Pietro Torrigiano, punched him and broke his nose, causing the disfigurement that is evident in portraits of Michelangelo. Jealous much? As he hit his 20s, Michelangelo's star only continued to rise, propelling him towards his destiny as one of the Renaissance's biggest names. Michelangelo wasn't just a one-trick pony. He excelled in sculpture, painting, and architecture. One of his earliest hits was the Pietà, a stunning sculpture completed when he was just 24. This masterpiece, showing the Virgin Mary cradling Jesus after the crucifixion, blew minds with its emotional depth and Michelangelo's jaw-dropping marble carving skills. Mary's robes flow so gracefully around her, and Jesus looks so real you'd think he's about to come back to life. They put the statue in St. Peter's Basilica, and it's been blowing minds ever since. I saw it myself, and it's smaller than you think, given its impact. You have to battle through crowds just to get close enough to see it in any detail, but it's definitely worth seeing. Then there's the David, arguably Michelangelo's crowning achievement. This colossal marble statue, finished between 1501 and 1504, stands over 17 feet tall and embodies classical beauty and perfection. With every chisel stroke, Michelangelo captured the strength and grace of David, making this sculpture a timeless symbol of human excellence. a team of consultants was called upon to decide where to put the statue, including but not limited to Leonardo da Vinci, Botticelli, Piero di Cosimo, and Filippino Lippi. Ultimately, they decided to put it in the Piazza della Signorina, in front of the Palazzo Vecchio. A replica stands there now with a tasteful placement of a fig leaf, while the original nude version resides in the Accademia Gallery. Legend has it that Tommaso de' Cavalieri was not only the muse behind the colossal masterpiece, that is David, but also the object of Michelangelo's affection. This isn't true. Michelangelo was 26 when he carved David, and he didn't meet Tommaso until his 50s. While there's no evidence linking Tommaso to the creation of David, there's certainly enough intrigue to keep the rumor mill spinning. You see, Michelangelo and Tommaso shared a bond that went beyond mere friendship. Their relationship was the stuff of sonnets and secret glances, with Michelangelo pouring his heart out in letters and poetry dedicated to his beloved Tommaso. He sent him some of his most famous paintings, including The Rape of Ganymede and The Torment of Titius, to ask for Tommaso's opinions. But like many tales from the Renaissance, the truth remains shrouded in mystery and artistic license. Whether his heart truly fluttered for Tommaso or not, we'll never know for sure. Most of the letters between the two were lost to fire. In 1940, as war clouds loomed over Italy, David was encased in a protective brick and sandbag shelter. The statue was carefully wrapped in a thick layer of mattress padding, and then surrounded by sandbags and metal framework. Additionally, the museum's windows were reinforced with steel shutters to shield the artwork from bomb blasts and shrapnel. Fortunately, Michelangelo's David emerged from the war unscathed, a testament to the dedication of those charged with safeguarding Italy's cultural treasures. Today, the statue resides in the Accademia Gallery, where it continues to captivate visitors from around the world, including myself. If you ever get to Florence, I highly suggest buying the Firenze card. It's basically a pass to more than 60 museums in the city, including the Uffizi dell'Accademia. Best money I ever spent. But I digress. In the world of painting, Michelangelo's crowning victory resides in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. According to Condivi's account, Donato Bramante, who was working on the building of St. Peter's Basilica, resented Michelangelo's commission for the Pope's tomb and convinced the Pope to commission him in a medium with which he was unfamiliar, in order that he might fail at the task. Michelangelo was originally commissioned to paint the 12 apostles on the triangular pendentives that supported the ceilings, and to cover the central part of the ceiling with ornament. Michelangelo persuaded Pope Julius II to give him a free hand, and embarked on an epic endeavor, devoting 4 years, from 1508 to 1512, to adorn the chapel's ceiling. Michelangelo worked while lying on his back on scaffolding, using brushes and pigments to paint directly onto the freshly laid plaster above him. He executed the work in multiple stages, beginning with rough sketches and gradually adding layers of color and detail to achieve the desired effect. The result? A breathtaking fresco cycle that weaves together scenes from the Book of Genesis, prophets, sibyls, and other biblical luminaries. With a deft hand and keen eye, Michelangelo breathed life into the ceiling, showcasing his mastery of composition, perspective, and color. His composition stretches over 500 square meters and contains over 300 figures. Today, the Sistine Chapel ceiling stands as a pinnacle of Western art, a testament to Michelangelo's unparalleled skill and enduring legacy. Michelangelo's architectural contributions are equally significant. He was tasked with designing the pièce de résistance of Renaissance architecture in 1546, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This ain't your run-of-the-mill dome, mind you. We're talking about a colossal structure that reaches heights of over 450 feet. Seriously, I climbed to the top of the damn thing, and it was like climbing the Mount Everest of basilicas. There are supposedly 551 steps in total, the first 231 of which only get you to the roof of the basilica. The final 320 steps are slanted in and get even slantier the closer you get to the top, which makes sense considering the thing is round, but it makes for a nauseating experience. I can honestly say that I have thrown up at the highest point in Rome, since nothing built there is allowed to be taller than it. Thank God they put trash cans up there for that very reason. But anyway, if anyone could pull off such a feat of craftsmanship, it's Michelangelo, the master of all things monumental and majestic. With his keen eye for harmonious proportions and a knack for classical flair, borrowed straight from ancient Rome, he turned St. Peter's into the crown jewel of Vatican City, a symbol of divine power and architectural prowess. He never got to see it completed, but it's still his dome. So if you're ever in Rome, crane your neck and give a nod of appreciation to the man who made it all possible, Michelangelo, the ultimate architectural maestro. By the way, side note, there are no paintings in St. Peter's Basilica. Instead, what you'll find are some jaw-dropping mosaics that'll make your eyes pop like champagne corks on New Year's Eve. These mosaics are grandiose, glittering wonders that cover every nook and cranny of the basilica's interior. Created by a legion of talented artisans over the centuries, these mosaics are like a symphony of colors and shapes, telling stories of saints, biblical scenes, and heavenly delights. So, same as Michelangelo's dome, take a moment to admire the mosaic marvels and give another appreciative nod to the artisans who turned stone and glass into timeless masterpieces. Back to Michelangelo. He also designed the Laurentian Library. The Medici family, known for their love of all things intellectual, decided they needed a swanky new place to stash their impressive collection of books and manuscripts. Who do they call to design this bibliophile's dream? None other than Michelangelo himself, because the guy could do it all. So Michelangelo gets to work, and what does he come up with? Well, first off, there's the staircase. They call it the Laurentian staircase, and let me tell you, it's not your average flight of stairs. Michelangelo threw in some classical vibes with Doric columns and pilasters, and adds a funky asymmetrical thing with the stairs. Plus, he played around with the light and shadow in the room, because why not? It's like walking up to the library is an artistic journey in itself. Once you're inside, it's like stepping into a Renaissance daydream. The reading room is all about harmony and proportion, with fancy coffered ceiling that screams, "Look at me, I'm important!" Michelangelo doesn't skimp on the details either. Every nook and cranny is filled with intricately carved desks, bookcases, and elegant windows that let in just the right amount of sunlight. It's like being inside a painting, but without all the awkward stares from the subjects. But here's the best part. Michelangelo didn't just care about making the place look pretty. He was all about functionality too. He wanted to make sure that the scholars could actually read their books without getting distracted by all the shiny things. So he set up the room with a central desk and little alcoves for books, because accessibility and quiet contemplation are where it's at. It's like he was saying, come for the books, stay for the ambiance. And let me tell you, it's an ambiance fit for a Renaissance king. Or at least a really fancy librarian. The Laurentian Library houses approximately 11,000 manuscripts, 2,500 papyri, 43 ostraca, 566 incunabula, 1,681 16th century prints, and 126,527 prints from the 17th to the 20th centuries. The core collection consists of approximately 3,000 manuscripts. These manuscripts include the library the Medici collected during the 15th century. It's an absolutely incredible collection. As Michelangelo approached his grand finale, he wasn't about to let old age slow his creative roll. Sure, his body was throwing fits with arthritis, and his eyes were playing peekaboo with blurry vision, but did that stop him? Not a chance. He kept chiseling away like a sculptor possessed, even if that meant squinting through squiggly lines like a Renaissance grandpa trying to decipher hieroglyphics. As the clock ticked and his body grumbled, Michelangelo took refuge in his Roman abode, where he became a recluse of creativity. The last sculpture that Michelangelo worked on, 6 days before his death, was the Rondanini Pieta. It could never be completed because Michelangelo carved it away until there was insufficient stone. On February 18, 1564, Michelangelo shuffled off this mortal coil at the ripe old age of 88. It was like the final brushstroke on his life's canvas, a stroke of genius that left the world both saddened and spellbound. He is interred at the Basilica of Santa Croce in Florence. Michelangelo's heir, Leonardo Buonarroti, commissioned Giorgio Vasari, the same guy who wrote one of Michelangelo's biographies, to design and build the tomb of Michelangelo, a monumental project that took over 14 years to complete. Marble for the tomb was supplied by Cosimo I de' Medici, Duke of Tuscany, who also organized a state funeral to honor Michelangelo in Florence. In a nutshell, Michelangelo's artistic vibe was all about honoring the human body, diving deep into spirituality, and chasing perfection like it's the last slice of pizza. His creations glorify nations' beauty, champion individual power, and channel divine vibes. Whether he was carving marble, slapping paint on a canvas, or sketching out architectural blueprints, Michelangelo's legacy is a timeless tale that still wows crowds across the globe. Now, let's dive into the world of Leonardo di Ser Piero da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man. He was born out of wedlock in 1452 in Vinci, Italy, to Piero da Vinci, who has a much longer proper name that I'm not even going to attempt, and his mother, Caterina di Meo Lippi. Between all of his father's marriages, Leonardo had 11 half-siblings, the last of which was born when Leo was 46 years old. From the get-go, he was all about asking questions and soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Seriously, if there was something to learn, Leo was on it like paint on a canvas. Around the age of 14, he became a garzone, or studio boy, in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, who was the leading Florentine painter and sculptor of his time. This was about the time of death of Verrocchio's master, the great sculptor Donatello. Leonardo became an apprentice by the age of 17 and remained in training for 7 years. Leonardo was exposed to theoretical training and a wide range of technical skills, including drafting, chemistry, metallurgy, metalworking, plaster casting, leather working, mechanics, and woodwork, as well as the artistic skills of drawing, painting, sculpting, and modeling. Vasari, yep, him again, tells a story of Leonardo as a very young man. A local peasant made himself a round buckler shield and requested that Ser Piero, Leo's father, have it painted for him. Leonardo, inspired by the story of Medusa, responded with a painting of a monster spitting fire that was so terrifying, his father bought a different shield to give to the peasant, and sold Leonardo's to a Florentine art dealer for a hefty sum, who in turn sold it to the Duke of Milan. But here's the thing about Leo. He's not content to stick to any one just thing. Oh no, he's a Renaissance man through and through, which means he's gotta know it all. So while he's busy perfecting his brushstrokes, he was also diving into math, science, and everything in between. He was like the original DIY scientist, conducting experiments and making observations left and right. According to Vasari, the young Leonardo was the first to suggest making the Arno River a navigable channel between Florence and Pisa. He was also filling up notebooks faster than you can say genius, jotting down sketches, diagrams, and all kinds of brainy stuff. The notebooks weren't just a place to doodle, they were a window into Leo's brilliant mind, showing off his insatiable curiosity and his quest to unlock the secrets of the universe. Most of Leonardo's writings are in mirror image cursive. Since Leonardo wrote with his left hand, it was probably easier for him to write right to left. Leonardo used a variety of shorthand and symbols, and states in his notes that he intended to prepare them for publication. In many cases, a single topic is covered in detail in both words and pictures on a single sheet, together carrying information that would be lost if the pages were published out of order. What's truly remarkable about these notebooks is their sheer breadth and depth. Still existing today are over 13,000 pages of notes and drawings. One minute you might find yourself staring at a meticulously detailed drawing of a human skull, complete with annotations about bone structure and muscle attachments. The next, you're marveling at a diagram of a flying machine, with Leo's notes detailing his theories on aerodynamics and propulsion. Leonardo da Vinci's love life has sparked some spicy gossip over the centuries, with many wondering about his romantic inclinations. Some historians have waggled their quills, suggesting that Leonardo might have leaned towards the gentleman's side of the love spectrum. Leonardo was tight with a bunch of strapping young lads, including his apprentices and studio assistants. He had a particularly close relationship with one fellow named Gian Giacomo Caparotti, aka Salai, who practically moved in with Leonardo and lent a hand with his work.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Court records of 1476, when he was 24, show that Leonardo and 3 other young men were charged with sodomy in an incident involving a known male prostitute. The charges were dismissed for lack of evidence, and there is speculation that since one of the accused was related to Lorenzo de' Medici, the family exerted its influence to secure the dismissal. Plus, there are some saucy sketches in Leonardo's notebooks that hint at his appreciation for the male form, and maybe a little bit more.
Yes, Queen!
When Ludovico Sforza was overthrown by France in 1500, Leonardo, who had been employed by him for a number of projects, fled Milan for Venice, accompanied by his assistant, Salai. In Venice, Leonardo was employed as a military architect and engineer, devising methods to defend the city from naval attack. In 1502, Leonardo became employed by Cesare Borgia, who hired him as his chief military engineer and architect. In 1503, Leonardo quit, returned to Venice, but then left for Milan again in 1506. In 1513, he was in Rome, and in 1516, he was in France. The man could not sit still. Now, let's talk about Leo's greatest hits, those masterpieces that have stood the test of time and continue to dazzle and intrigue us today. First up, of course, we've got the Mona Lisa, that enigmatic lady with the ever-elusive smile. Painted between 1503 and 1506 in Florence, this iconic portrait is like the Beyoncé of the art world. Everyone knows her, and everyone's got an opinion about her. What sets her apart? Well, besides her cryptic grin, Leo's use of sfumato, a fancy Italian word for blurring the lines, gives her an otherworldly, almost dreamlike quality that's hard to put into words. And let's not forget about her eyes. Those piercing, soulful eyes that seem to follow you wherever you go. It's like she's got a secret and she's daring you to figure it out. Legend has it that the lady behind the Mona Lisa was Lisa Gherardini, the better half of Florentine merchant Francesco del Giocondo. Giorgio Vasari apparently thought it was true, giving this theory some credit. Records of the time also show that Leonardo scored a gig from Giocondo right around the time he started work on the Mona Lisa. But hold your paintbrushes, folks. Some art historians are convinced she was actually a highborn lady, while others are keen on the idea that she might have been a saucy courtesan. There are even whispers that she's a sneaky self-portrait of Leonardo da Vinci in drag. He never actually stopped working on the painting, still tweaking it to perfection until he died. Of course, the Mona Lisa has had her fair share of adventures over the years. She's been stolen, vandalized, and even attacked with acid. But through it all, she's remained a symbol of beauty, mystery, and intrigue. So if you find yourself in Paris, be sure to pay her a visit at the Louvre Museum. Next on our tour is The Last Supper, Leo's epic mural depicting Jesus and his crew having a last-minute meal before the big finale. Completed around 1498, this masterpiece is like a Renaissance version of a blockbuster movie, full of drama, emotion, and jaw-dropping special effects. Well, maybe not the special effects part, but you get the idea. What makes it so special? Well, besides its sheer size and scale, Leo's use of perspective is off the charts, creating a sense of depth and dimension that sucks you right into the scene. It's like you're sitting at the table with the apostles, trying to figure out who's going to pick up the check. The writer Matteo Bandello observed Leonardo at work and wrote that some days he would paint from dawn till dusk without stopping to eat, and then not paint for 3 or 4 days at a time. This was beyond the comprehension of the prior of the convent, who hounded him until Leonardo asked Ludovico Sforza to intervene. The painting was acclaimed as a masterpiece, but it deteriorated rapidly. Within 100 years, it was described as completely ruined. Leonardo, instead of using the reliable technique of fresco, had used tempera over a ground that was mainly gesso, resulting in a surface subject to mold and flaking. Despite this, the painting remains one of the most reproduced works of art. Countless copies have been made in various mediums. During the World War II, the Last Supper faced serious risks due to the bombings and air raids that targeted Milan, where the mural is located. To protect it from potential destruction, the Italian authorities took several measures. The mural was covered with sandbags and a scaffolding structure to shield it from debris in case of bomb blasts. Additionally, a protective structure made of bricks and wooden supports was constructed around the painting. And to minimize the risk of fire, they installed fireproof curtains. Despite these efforts, the Last Supper did suffer some damage during the war, primarily due to the deteriorating conditions and impact of nearby bombings. However, thanks to the protective measures, the damage was not catastrophic, and the mural survived the war relatively intact. If you find yourself in Milan, be sure to pay tribute to this masterpiece at the Santa Maria delle Grazie. Leonardo wasn't just an artist, he was a scientific savant, an anatomical aficionado, and an all-around creative genius. He practiced botany in the gardens of Vatican City and was commissioned to make plans for the Pope's proposed draining of the Pontine marshes. He designed elaborate machines for warfare, transportation, and construction, envisioning tanks, submarines, and even a rudimentary version of a helicopter. He even made a mechanical lion, which, during a pageant for King Francis I of France, walked towards the king and opened its chest to reveal a bouquet of lilies. Sure, these inventions might have seemed a tad ambitious for his time, but hey, the man was a visionary. It was like he was playing SimCity with real-life blueprints.
I'm gonna do crazy stuff.
He was all about getting his hands dirty, literally, with his pioneering dissections of human cadavers and making notes for a treatise on vocal cords. He studied the mechanical functions of the skeleton and the muscular forces that are applied to it in a manner that prefigured the modern science of biomechanics. He drew the heart and vascular system, the sex organs and other internal organs, and made one of the first scientific drawings of a fetus in utero. Thanks to his meticulous anatomical studies, we now have a much deeper understanding of the inner workings of the human body. It was like he was the OG Dr. Frankenstein, minus the whole reanimating corpses thing. Despite the sands of time trickling away like grains of fine Italian marble, Leonardo remained as curious and creative as ever. On May 2nd, 1519, Leonardo da Vinci bid farewell to the mortal realm, leaving behind a legacy as vast and wondrous as the cosmos itself. Vasari, in his Lives of the Artist, written 1568, opens his chapter on Leonardo with this.
In the normal course of events, many men and women are born with remarkable talents. But occasionally, in a way that transcends nature, a single person is marvelously endowed by heaven with beauty, grace, and talent in such abundance that he leaves other men far behind. All his actions seem inspired, and indeed everything he does clearly comes from God rather than from human skill. Everyone acknowledged that this was true of Leonardo da Vinci, an artist of outstanding physical beauty, who displayed infinite grace in everything that he did, and who cultivated his genius so brilliantly that all problems he studied he solved with ease.
While Leonardo was for sure buried in the church of Saint Florentin at the Château d'Amboise, the current locations of his remains is unclear. Much of the Château d'Amboise was damaged during the French Revolution, leading to the church's demolition in 1802. Some of the graves were destroyed in the process, leaving the whereabouts of Leonardo's remains subject to dispute. There is one skeleton found that might be Leonardo, and scientists of today are attempting to sequence his DNA with that of 14 known living relatives. Here's hoping they figure it out in my lifetime. Next, we have Raffaello Sanzio da Urbino, the golden child of the Italian Renaissance. Born in 1483, I wouldn't be surprised if he came into the world with a paintbrush in his hand, thanks to his artist dad, Giovanni Santi. Growing up in Urbino, Italy, Raphael was surrounded by creativity from day one. His mother unfortunately died when he was 8, and after his father's death when Raphael was 11, he took over running his dad's workshop, possibly with the help of his stepmother. Around the age of 17, Raphael packed his brushes and headed off to apprentice under the masterful Pietro Perugino in Perugia. Let me tell you, it was like finding the holy grail of art mentors. Under Perugino's wing, Raphael didn't just sharpen his skills, he polished them to a gleaming shine. Perugino wasn't just teaching Raphael how to paint, he was schooling him in the art of Renaissance magic. Harmony, balance, idealized beauty, it was like learning the secret recipe for artistic perfection. You could practically see Raphael soaking up every drop of knowledge like a sponge, turning it into his own signature style. He led a bit of a nomadic life, spending a good deal of time in Florence, the biggest influence of his time there being Leonardo da Vinci. In his paintings made during the years they both resided in Florence, you can see Raphael's figures take on a more dynamic and complex positions. He made his own versions of Leo's Holy Family and Leda and the Swan paintings, perfecting his own version of Leo's signature sfumato. Now, let's step into the Vatican Palace and take a stroll through the Stanze di Raffaello, or the Raphael Rooms. In 1508, Raphael moved to Rome and stayed there for the rest of his life. The frescoes he created there aren't just paintings on walls. They're windows into Raphael's genius. Executed between 1508 and 1524, these works showcase Raphael's mastery of composition, perspective, and classical imagery. It's like he took a time machine back to ancient Rome and brought back a piece of history just for us to marvel at. The first of the famous stanze to be painted, now known as the Stanza della Segnatura, remains generally regarded as his greatest masterpiece, as it contains the School of Athens, a gathering of ancient philosophers and scholars, all depicted with the grace and harmony that only Raphael could bring to life. It's not just a painting, it's a celebration of classical philosophy, a tribute to the intellectual giants who shaped the Western world. And Raphael? Well, he's the maestro conducting the symphony, orchestrating every brushstroke with precision and passion. Michelangelo was painting the Sistine Chapel during this time, and Raphael painted him into the School of Athens as the philosopher Heraclitus. He completed the sequence of 3 rooms, each with paintings on each wall, and often ceilings too, increasingly leaving the work of painting from his detailed drawings to the large and skilled workshop team he had acquired. Vasari says that Raphael eventually had a workshop of 50 pupils and assistants, many of whom later became significant artists in their own right. This was arguably the largest workshop team assembled under any single master painter, and much higher than the norm. The first 2 rooms had the highest quality paintings, but as the painting of the rooms continued and Raphael himself spent less time doing the work, the quality dropped off. There's a 4th room, completed after his death, that only incorporates some of Raphael's drawings and designs. Raphael had this magical touch that brought the Virgin Mary and the Christ Child to life like no other. Take the Sistine Madonna and the Madonna of the Goldfish, for example. In the Sistine Madonna from 1512, Raphael captures the Virgin Mary and the Christ Child with such tenderness and emotion that it's hard not to feel a lump in your throat. It's like he's inviting you into their world, where love and devotion are palpable in every brushstroke. And then there's the Madonna of the Goldfinch, a masterpiece from around 1506 that's as charming as it is captivating. With the Christ Child holding a goldfinch, a symbol of the Passion, Raphael adds layers of meaning to this tender scene, reminding us of the deeper significance behind the Virgin Mary's embrace. These paintings aren't just about religious devotion. They're about humanity, love, the bond between a mother and a child that transcends time and space. In addition to his religious works, Raphael also excelled in portraiture, producing striking and lifelike portraits that captured the essence of his subjects with remarkable clarity and sensitivity. His portraits, such as the portraits of Baldassare Castiglione, are characterized by their psychological depth and refined elegance, reflecting Raphael's ability to capture the inner character of his sitters with subtle nuance and insight. Painted around 1514-1515, this masterpiece isn't just a likeness of Castiglione. It's a window into his world. Raphael doesn't just capture his subject's physical features, he delves deeper, revealing Castiglione's inner thoughts and emotions with remarkable clarity. You can almost feel the weight of his gaze, the wisdom in his eyes, as if Castiglione himself is reaching out from the canvas to share his story. And that's what sets Raphael apart as a portraitist. His ability to go beyond the surface and capture the essence of his subjects. Whether it's a nobleman, a scholar, or even a pope, Raphael's portraits are more than just paintings. They're glimpses into the lives of the people he portrayed, immortalized for eternity in strokes of genius. In 1515, he was given powers as prefect over all antiquities unearthed within or a mile outside the city of Rome. Anyone excavating antiquities was required to inform Raphael within 3 days, and stonemasons were not allowed to destroy inscriptions without permission. Raphael wrote a letter to Pope Leo suggesting ways of halting the destruction of ancient monuments and proposed a visual survey of the city to record all antiquities in an organized fashion. Raphael intended to make an archaeological map of ancient Rome, but this was never achieved. 4 of his archaeological drawings are still preserved. Since I talked about it with the first 2, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the rumors of Raphael's intimate life. Raphael's close relationship with a select few of his male pupils and companions did raise a few eyebrows among his contemporaries. One particular figure who has sparked speculation is Giulio Romano, Raphael's favorite pupil and trusted assistant, who has left many of Raphael's drawings and possessions after his death. Some historians have suggested that the relationship may have been more than just teacher and student, citing Raphael's deep affection for Giulio and the intimate nature of their correspondence. He never married, but in 1514 became engaged to Maria Bibbiena, Cardinal Bibbiena's niece. He seems to have been talked into this by the cardinal himself, and his lack of enthusiasm seems to be shown by the marriage not having taken place before she died in 1520. But as with many historical rumors, separating fact from fiction can be a bit like untangling a particularly knotty paintbrush. While there's no smoking gun to confirm Raphael's homosexuality, the whispers of Renaissance gossip certainly add an intriguing layer to the enigmatic artist's legacy. But seriously, Raphael's influence was no joke. His attention to detail and emphasis on naturalism inspired countless artists to follow in his footsteps, trying to capture that same magic in their own work. One of the coolest things about Raphael's influence is how it shaped the development of art in the centuries that followed. You've got the High Renaissance, where artists were all about balance, proportion, and idealized figures, basically trying to be as Raphael-esque as possible. Then you've got Mannerism, where things start to get a little wild. Artists like Parmigianino, Pontormo, and Rosso Fiorentino took Raphael's style and ran with it, adding their own flair and personality to create something totally unique and expressive. Raphael wasn't just a big deal in Italy. His influence reached far beyond its borders, spreading like wildfire across Europe. His works were like the OG viral content of the art world, thanks to prints and copies that made their way into the hands of artists and patrons all over the continent. In Northern Europe, artists like Albrecht Dürer and Hans Holbein the Younger were totally smitten with Raphael's style. They couldn't get enough of his humanistic approach to portraiture and his knack for capturing anatomy and expression with precision. But Raphael's influence didn't just stop there. His works were dissected and analyzed by art theorists and critics who couldn't stop gushing about his technical skill, compositional genius, and ability to tug at your heartstrings with just a brushstroke. On April 6, 1520, at the age of only 37, Raphael bid adieu to the mortal coil and was buried in the Pantheon, per his request. Bissotti suggested his death was brought about because he was exhausted from having too much sex. Later historians think it could have been a combination of an infectious disease and bloodletting. We'll never know for sure. Raphael wasn't just a flash in the pan. His influence can still be felt today, with artists of all stripes drawing inspiration from his work. Raphael's legacy lives on as one of the greatest in Western art history. Last, but simply not least, we have Donato di Niccolo di Beto Bardi. Unlike the other 3 turtles, he came way before, but had some serious impact. The unsung hero of the early Renaissance, he was born in Florence around 1386, though we don't know for certain. His first appearance in any documentary records is from 1401, in which he was accused of hitting a German with a stick. It's thought he may have helped his friend Filippo Brunelleschi with his entry into the famous competition for the baptistery doors in Florence, but any part actually played by Donatello is unknown. Later, under the wing of renowned sculptor Lorenzo Ghiberti, aka the man who won the baptistery door competition, Donatello's talent began to take shape like a block of marble under a skilled hand. Ghiberti was the master of bronze casting, and his workshop was the Hogwarts of sculpture, where Donatello learned the tricks of the trade and secrets of crafting masterpieces that would stand the test of time. With Ghiberti as his Yoda, Donatello learned the Jedi ways of materials, techniques, and artistic vision. When he stepped out on his own, Donatello didn't just follow the beaten path, he blazed a trail through the marble wilderness. His sculptures weren't just static figures frozen in time, they breathed life, passion, and emotion. In Donatello's rendition of the classic tale of David versus Goliath, the biblical hero isn't just a muscle-bound conqueror flexing his victory muscles. Donatello's David is a raw, real teenager who just happened to slay a giant. Cast in bronze and standing tall, this David isn't celebrating, he's contemplating. With a furrowed brow and clenched fists, he's caught in that heart-pounding moment after the battle, still processing the weight of what he's done. It's not just a statue, it's a snapshot of humanity in its most vulnerable, yet triumphant form. Like the other three, Donatello was also subject to rumors of a less than straight nature. His David statue only added fuel to the gossip fire. There was a collection of celebrity gossip called the Detti Piacevoli, probably compiled around 1480. According to this collection, Donatello was quite fond of surrounding himself with what they called handsome assistants. They were especially beautiful boys that he would, quote, stain with makeup so that no one else would find them pleasing. The gossip collection also states that when one of his assistants had the audacity to up and leave after a quarrel, they made up by laughing together. Apparently, laughing was a slang term for sex. I really want to dive into etymology of the word laugh now, because apparently the definition has gone through a few changes since then. We can't say for certain what Donatello got up to behind closed doors. After all, gossip is just gossip, right? And unlike some other artists, Botticelli, there aren't any recorded denunciations for sodomy in the Florentine archives. But hey, who really knows what went down in Renaissance Florence? After all, a little mystery only adds to the intrigue. Another project he was involved in was a new sculptural project at the Orsan Michel, a building owned by the guilds of Florence. It was transitioning from a grain market to a church, but hey, who doesn't love a good makeover, right? There were 14 niches on the outside, and each guild was responsible for a statue in each one. Enter Donatello. He was tasked with sculpting a marble Saint Mark for the Linen Weavers Guild. According to legend, they weren't too thrilled with his first attempt. So Donatello pulls a classic move and covers up the statue while he worked to improve it. 2 weeks later, he unveils the same statue without having made a single change. And what do you know? The linen weavers are suddenly head over heels for it. You won't find the original in the niche anymore though. It's been moved to the museum inside the building and replaced outside by a replica. In the realm of equestrian statues, Donatello's Gatta Malata isn't just a sculpture, it's a masterpiece on horseback. Crafted from bronze and standing tall between 1445 and 1450, this larger-than-life tribute to the gondottiero Erasmo da Narni, aka Gatta Malata, is more than just a commemoration of a military leader. It's considered one of the first equestrian statues since antiquity. Sometime around 1410, Donatello decides to take on a new challenge, a painted wooden crucifix, which now resides in Santa Croce. It portrays a Christ in the midst of some serious agony, with eyes wide open and mouth slightly ajar, giving it a realistic touch that'll send shivers down your spine. According to the story, as told by Vasari, Donatello, proud as a peacock, decides to show off his creation to his friend Brunelleschi. But instead of getting a round of applause, Brunelleschi has the nerve to say that it makes Christ look like a commoner. Donatello challenged him to do better. He took the challenge to heart and created the Brunelleschi crucifix. Ah, the friendly rivalry between artistic geniuses. Who knew sculpting could be so dramatic? Another wood sculpture attributed to Donatello is one of the St. John the Baptist in Venice. Now, Donatello wasn't exactly known for his woodwork, but hey, when you're asked to carve a statue for one of the most important churches in Venice, you don't say no. So he rolls up his sleeves, grabs his chisels, and gets to work. This statue is probably the only piece by Donatello in the entire city. For years, folks thought this statue was created after Donatello's stint in Padua, where he supposedly honed his craft and became even more expressive. But lo and behold, conservation work revealed his signature and date of creation on the statue, something he very rarely did. The statue is actually from 1438, before his Padua days. In the 1430s and 40s, he had a thing for sculpting young children dancing, cherubs, or putti, if you want to get fancy, and these little mischief makers he's called spiritelli, which are basically like imps or sprites. One of his early masterpieces in this genre was a set of 6 freestanding bronze spiritelli that he whipped up for the cover of the font at the Siena Baptistery in 1429. These little guys weren't just cute, they were groundbreaking. They've been said to be the first true freestanding figurines of the Renaissance. They captured the essence of the Renaissance, a fusion of classical themes with Christian symbolism, and became the talk of the town. His pièce de résistance in this genre was a relief frieze for the singing gallery of Florence Cathedral. Luca della Robbia had already scored the commission for the first gallery in 1431, but Donatello wasn't about to be outdone. When he got his shot at the second gallery in 1433, he was determined to make it more beautiful than della Robbia's. In fact, his contract promised him 20% more moolah if he succeeded. If you find yourself strolling through Florence Cathedral in the future, keep an eye out for those mischievous spiritelli and cherubs. They might just steal the show. Despite the sands of time slipping through his weathered hands, Donatello remained a maestro of marble and bronze, his creative fervor undiminished by the passage of years. One of his last major projects, with the help of assistants, were reliefs that now form 2 pulpits in San Lorenzo in Florence, the burial place of the Medicis. It's possible the reliefs weren't meant for that, only assembled that way in the century after. Donatello, the illustrious sculptor of the Renaissance era, departed from this earthly stage on December 13, 1466, around 79 or 80 years old. The circumstances of his death aren't known, but what we do know is that his artistic output was so varied that his influence can be seen in all of Florentine sculpture from the 15th century. Michelangelo's David a decade later is said to be both an ode and a challenge to Donatello. While Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello might sound like the ultimate Renaissance boy band, they were actually the rock stars of art of their time, each bringing their own flair to the canvas, or marble. One thing these dudes had in common was their skills in drawing the human body. Seriously, they could sketch a muscle or bone structure like nobody's business, making their figures look so real you swear they'd jump off the page, or pedestal. And let's not forget their knack for shading and light play. Whether it was Michelangelo's dramatic chiaroscuro or Leonardo's smoky sfumato, these guys knew how to work shadows and highlights like pros, giving their artworks that extra oomph of realism. Inspired by the rediscovery of all things ancient Greek and Roman, these artists were like kids in a candy shop, soaking up every bit of classical goodness they could find. From Michelangelo's muscular sculptures to Donatello's graceful figures, they were all about bringing back that classical vibe. And let's not forget Raphael, whose architectural designs were like a love letter to ancient Rome, with their grand columns and symmetrical perfection. While they all shared some common ground in their mastery of anatomy and detail, these artists each brought their own flavor to the canvas, making the Renaissance scene one heck of a diverse party. They may have had different strokes, pun intended, when it came to their artistic styles, but these Renaissance men set the bar high for artists to come. And let's not forget the power players behind the scenes, the patrons. These rock stars weren't just creating masterpieces for fun, they were often on a mission from the rich and powerful. From churches to noble families to political bigwigs, these artists were constantly rubbing elbows with the upper crusts, taking commissions left and right. And let's be real, when you're painting the Pope's ceiling or sculpting a duke's likeness, you're not just making art, you're making a statement. Their works became symbols of power and prestige, flaunting the wealth and status of their patrons for all to see. It was like a Renaissance version of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, except instead of trashy reality TV, it was frescoes, sculptures, and paintings. So, while we marvel at the artistic geniuses of these four, let's not forget the movers and shakers who made it all possible. The patrons who bankrolled their brilliance and made sure their names would go down in history. The Renaissance wasn't just an Italian affair, it was a cultural revolution that spread like wildfire across Europe, thanks in no small part to the artistic firepower of these masters. Their works weren't just admired in the piazzas of Florence or the halls of the Vatican, they were celebrated and coveted across the continent. From the courts of France to the palaces of Spain, everyone wanted a piece of the Renaissance action. And it wasn't just their art that left a lasting impression, it was their ethos, their spirit of innovation and exploration. Their artistic prowess wasn't just revolutionary, they were shell-shockingly monumental, sneaking their way like ninjas into the hearts and minds of people across the globe, and leaving a mark on history that's as enduring as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles' love for pizza. Whether you're gazing upon the majestic David or marveling at the enigmatic smile of the Mona Lisa, you're witnessing the enduring legacy of these four titans of art who changed the world, one brushstroke, one chisel blow at a time. And that is the end of our episode today. Thank you very much to the books Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson, Michelangelo, His Epic Life by Martin Gayford, Raphael, From Urbino to Rome by Hugo Chapman and Tom Henry, Donatello by Timothy Verdon, and Ugly Renaissance, Sex, Greed, Violence, and Depravity in the Age of Beauty by Alexander Lee for all of the research help, as well as the countless websites I've hit up for information. Hope to have you tune in to the next episode. I'm considering talking about ancient Roman emperors. You can find me on my Facebook page, ADHD History, and on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and YouTube at It's ADHD History. See you next time.
Cowabunga, dude!